Here with my good friend Steve White today. How are you, buddy?
I am good. It's good to see you, Jim.
You too. It's been a long, long time.
Man, it we it's so bizarre. We spent so much time together traveling so many years ago,
Yeah,
and the bond is still there. That's one of the Continental things. It's kind of like,
right,
I don't know, what's the Marine thing? Once a Marine, always a Marine. There's
right.
it's sort of like once a Continental, always a Continental.
Yeah, honestly, there's a handful of people, you and maybe Mike Harcrow and one or two
Yep.
others that I have logged more continental miles with than anybody. Uh,
Yep.
well, I'm sure we'll get to that, but great to see you, and thanks for taking the time. I know you just got back from overseas, and I want to hear all about that.
Yeah.
It's been a blast having conversations with Continental family, as I like to call them, and
Yep.
ask the simple question: how has your Continental experience made an impact on what you do today?
Yeah, man. It's interesting. I've been processing that since you first got in touch about this particular interview, and I thought, oh man, so many things, but they're so subtle for me. As I was going back, there's not one moment or one event that was the game changer. But over the course of the tours that we took and the travel, I think two things popped out for me. Continentals gave me experience, and it gave me exposure. It gave me experience with leadership and travel and people and all the stuff that were part of that. Everything from sales at the end of a concert to organizing whatever would happen on a day off, all that kind of stuff. But then the exposure is also hugely important, at least for me. Exposure to ideas, exposure to different kinds of thinking, exposure to different places and culture. All of that just kind of left a quiet imprint as I grew in leadership and other kinds of things. And now in the ministry I'm doing, that is kind of an international thing. Now I'm seeing some real tie-ins to, oh yeah, I was already there. Oh,
Wow.
I was in that country. Would love to talk to you more. Those kinds of things. It's
Wow.
been yeah, foundational to my ministry and leadership. So can't say
Talk
enough.
about that a little bit. Talk about your ministry. What are you doing?
Yep. So about a several years ago, I started just every now and then answering emails, answering Facebook messages, that kind of stuff from pastors internationally, asking questions about leadership or whatever that might be.
Right.
Just a year ago, we took what was a long thread of social media stuff and missions trips and ministry experience in the US and launched an international ministry that is training pastors who will not otherwise have access to training.
Wow.
So what we learned was, despite what we tend to think of as normal in the US, 95% of the pastors in the world have no access to training. And they don't have the education, or they don't have the money, or they're a subsistence farmer and they can't leave home long enough to get trained. So as I started piecing some of that stuff together, we created a ministry that then goes and gives them the opportunity to get some basic training in leadership principles and Bible skills and the basic stuff that we take for granted. They have no clue. They're already pastors. They're already passionate followers of Jesus. They've got churches. They want to be good leaders. They just have no way to get the training that will make them good leaders. So we're filling that niche.
That's incredible. Where are you working right now primarily?
We Most of our ground game right now is in East Africa, although our process starts on social media. What we've discovered is, around the world, pastors don't have access to training. They do have access to Facebook. It's free. It doesn't require any particular education other than a very basic literacy, and it is everywhere. So we just do daily posts that give them these tiny little nuggets of biblical truth. Right now, we've got 30,000, well, that was at last count, 30,000 followers in 123 nations. We're doing a lot of stuff then via Messenger. They'll comment or they'll message. We start developing relationships and answering questions. I think last month it was just about 4,000 messages and comments that we responded to. then where we identify a specific organization that has a ground game happening, they just don't know how to train their pastors.
Yeah.
Starting in Kenya for us, we'll do some basic Bible teaching, train them how to lead their own groups, leave them with some basic resources, and let it explode from there. In the slightly over a year we've been doing this, we've had about 10,000 people in East Africa go through the book of Ephesians using the material that we're doing.
Wow.
It went from, hey, this is a pretty cool idea. I think God's calling us to do this. We're going to have to go raise the money to fund a nonprofit, to every time I go, I feel like I'm trying to catch up to something God already did.
Wow. And you just got back, right?
Yes, last week.
Week or so ago, yeah.
Yeah. And every time we go there, somebody will say, well, this is what we've been waiting for. What took you so long? Like, I didn't know I was coming until last week, kind of a response. We met with a couple months ago, my wife and I went to Uganda and met with a pastors association. There's a group of several hundred churches in Uganda, interdenominational, and they wanted to hear what our program looked like and whether it might work for them. We did about 30 minutes worth of example and presentation, and the leader stood up, said, "This is exactly what we've been waiting for. All in favor of partnering with 21C International." And within about 15 minutes, they had determined that they were going to partner with us, formed a committee, established roles on the committee, assigned a liaison, and they're now just waiting for us to come back and start the training process.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's nuts. So we started really fast, mostly in Kenya, and then because of the way we do it, we're training the trainers. It's not on us. We'll train them to go train other people.
Right.
And that's how we went from the additive formula of we go and do seminars to the exponential growth of we train 10, they each train 10, they each train 10. And right now there's something like 250 groups independently studying this material in Kenya. They're then taking it to all the other countries. So it's in Tanzania. I got a voicemail from a bishop in Burundi who said, "I came to one of your seminars in Kenya. I took the material back and we finished the material. What's next? And when are you coming to Burundi?" Okay, great. No idea. I'm going to talk to Jim Schmidt. I'm going to find out who else wants to join us, and then we'll send somebody to Burundi. Anyway,
that'd be fantastic. I'd love to see us help in some way. We've got a big network of we use all kinds of different numbers, but I'd say conservatively 70,000 people that have been part of the Continental ministry over the years.
That is such an amazing thing.
It is. It's astounding. It really is.
It is. And I look back on all that time and think, man, how foundational that was in taking me from kind of a shy, low self-esteem, to now I'm the CEO of an international ministry. I've been on teaching teams at mega churches. So much of that goes back to my foundation of ministry with Continentals. So
wow, that's fantastic. If you sort of look at the landscape of your Continental experience, and maybe think in terms of a principle or a concept or maybe one particular nugget, is there anything that comes to your mind as you think back?
I think partly for me, because I had the opportunity to do so many tours, I had the opportunity over almost a decade to watch the scope of what God does. And so for me, one of my takeaway principles is that God's always working something that I probably am not aware of. And in some cases, it's God's just doing a work in me. In other cases, churches were transformed. In other cases, entire political landscapes. I'm trying to remember, were you the director on the tour where we went into East Berlin? It was
spring of 86.
80. Probably that would.
Then we went to Kenya.
Yep. That was, and East Berlin, we were there, and the wall came down. What, 3 years later?
89. Yeah, 3 years later.
Yeah, and we were in 84. might also have been you. In 84, yeah, we were in the Soviet Union, yeah?
Russia, Romania, and Bulgaria.
Yep. And again, watching the scope of what God does, you study scripture and he's behind the rise and fall of empires. And we were in Romania, Timișoara, not that long before perestroika happened, and just that entire Soviet empire just stopped. All of that kind of stuff just reminds me consistently to watch for what God's doing in the world around me, because something is always happening, and if you watch for it, you can see God at work.
Wow. Well, I think there's lots of that going on right now too.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crazy time. Well, I'm excited about what you're doing, and we talk about the ripple effect all the time, and now you're creating a ripple effect through what you're doing, and now into Burundi and who knows where else. So it's very exciting. I appreciate you taking the time. It's just great to catch up a little bit, and I really do hope that we can help in your process. That somebody will watch this and think, "Hey, I want to be a part of that." So, and we'll banner your web address and that kind of thing. So we want to support what our Continental family are out there doing. So.
Well, certainly my background with the Continentals has given me the foundation for what I'm doing now. So if that works for somebody else, that'd be awesome.
Have you ever wished you could gift your life-changing Continental experience to someone else? Well, you can. Your monthly giving can make a huge impact for our teams all over the world. Did you know that this year we'll have more than 20 Continental groups on the road, communicating in 7 different languages? The Continental story goes on, so keep writing your part of it by being on our support team. And our groups will say thank you in 7 different languages.
All over the world, God's Spirit